Excuse me, I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Joanne Fine. I am chair of the Albuquerque Police Oversight Board. Welcome. We're grateful for you for your being here. And for those of you that are watching on television, we appreciate your attention and support of this process. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Valerie. Ms. St. John. Mission statement starts all of our meetings. Our mission as a board is advancing constitutional policing and accountability for APD and the Albuquerque community. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that anybody has to the agenda? Content or order? No? There being none, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Review and approval, public comments. We have Mr. Michael Zokol. Am I pronouncing your name right, sir?
My name is Michael Zokol. I just basically wanted to introduce myself. I am the chair of the Southwest Citizens Police Council. I'm here to just learn a little bit more about what you guys do, how you operate, and what I can take back to the council to maybe make your lives easier, our lives easier, and how we can work together in a better process. So that's basically, I'm just here to learn and observe.
Well, we have much to learn from each other, don't we?
I guess so, yeah.
This is between us. We are the civilian input. We're at least the lion's share of it. And the CPCs are really important to this process, and I look forward to your participation tonight and ongoing collaboration going forward.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you guys
Thank
for
you
your time.
for being here.
Oh, you bet.
Thank you. Okay, review and approval of the minutes. I have already gone on, visited with Michelle about the changes I had. Are there any other changes to the minutes?
Those changes made?
Yes, Michelle, you made those changes, right?
Chair Fine, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Mr. Harness, we talked about, Mr. Harness and I discussed these three items for our discussion as a board. This would be not only a good place to talk about these things, but in each of our agendas, if there are things that you want to bring up for discussion other than your committee reports, this would be a good place for that. And I asked Mr. Harness to give us 5 highlights from the IMR6. That is the most recent report submitted to the court by Dr. Ginger, the monitor, for the court-ordered settlement agreement. And Mr. Harness, would you share your thoughts with us?
Chair Fine and honorable board members, IMR 6, which was produced to the public on the 1st of November when it was filed with the court, and will be presented to Judge Brack on November 16th at 9 a.m. in the Chama courtroom, 333 West Lomas Avenue, the federal courthouse. I picked out 5 points. 2 of them relate to the CPOA. We are continuing to struggle with issues for timelines for our investigations, and we are having a staff meeting on Tuesday to work on those issues for investigative timelines. We were taken out of secondary compliance for our investigations based upon an administratively closed case in which the investigator did not view the video, the lapel video for the case. However, the monitor agreed with the closing of the case, but they wanted that one step included in the investigation, so therefore they deemed that investigation to be out of compliance, and so that took us below the 95% evaluation rate for secondary compliance. As it relates to the police department, they continue to struggle with investigations and reportings of use of force. A new issue has come about with the concept of de minimis force, which has been introduced to the department but has not been trained properly or properly noticed as the monitor sees it. So that is going to be an issue moving forward in the future, this concept of de minimis force.
Can you explain what that means, de minimis force?
Yeah, it is the department's attempt to establish a definition for a use of force which would be not reportable, which would be so minimal, so small that the department would not need to report it or investigate it.
Didn't we have some discussion of this previously ourselves, in that some of the uses of force, things that you would commonly think of as like knee strikes, I want to say, and some other things that were all of a sudden not to be considered as use of force, isn't that correct?
Chair Fine, no, that those knee strikes and distraction techniques would not be considered within this category of de minimis force. This is escorting someone in handcuffs where the subject may jerk away, but the officer pulls them back to walk them to the squad car under the use of force because there was physicality used to gain the control of the subject. It is by definition, use of force. And so those types of instances, the department feels they want to carve out these minor exceptions as de minimis and therefore not reportable and not needing of an investigation.
Okay, so distraction techniques, de minimis, then distraction, then use of force. Is distraction anywhere in there?
No, distraction techniques are nowhere contemplated or associated with de minimis use of force. Distraction techniques are a use of force and have been
Require reporting.
Yes.
Okay, so there's and the definition is, and your point about bringing it up for IMR 6 is that if I understood you correctly, the monitor doesn't feel like it's been trained well enough what the definition of de minimis force is?
Chair Fine, that's correct. It is a concept that hasn't necessarily been written well in policy and been trained and gone through the proper vetting for it to be an accepted concept.
Okay, and all right, thank you.
But in my 5 points, I also want to point out that the monitor is pleased with the specialized units of APD. They continue to make great progress and are at or nearing full compliance.
And is that, I know it's SWAT, but who else? The K-9?
The specialized units would be SWAT, CIT, those types of units.
Are there others? Isn't K-9 one of the ones that was applauded before?
K-9 unit is a part of the SWAT team.
Oh, okay.
Fair question. In your opinion, what do you think that the SWAT team is doing differently than what they were doing previously? Just your perception of.
Chair Fine, Board Member Waits, what the SWAT team has done well is it has done a great job of incorporating the policy, training to the policy, reviewing itself, and then closing the loop to those reviews and those trainings. And that is what's highlighted by the monitor through the reports starting from IMR 1. They also do a great job of using the matrix that was developed in order to activate a SWAT call out. And they are very rigorous about making sure that those criteria are met before they go out. And then they get to a scene, they have their established protocols, they follow those protocols, and they realize that they have time on their side and they are no longer in a rush. So they will take as much time as necessary to arrest the subject of the warrant if it's a call out for an arrest, or to take into custody somebody who has barricaded themselves inside of a building or a dwelling.
And the reason I asked that question, I think it's important that we, as you know, let the community know that we are, or they have made improvements there, because at one time, and this is just my opinion, when SWAT was called out, somebody died. And I don't know what the data is today, but I think that I've seen a grave improvement on that organization. So I appreciate that, and that's why I asked you that question. So thank you.
I'd like to know who is the commander over SWAT?
I
If we were
believe,
to say,
is it McDonald?
atta guy.
Thank you. Commander McDonald and Lieutenant Mizell are the leaders of the SWAT team.
Thank you.
And following a matrix on calls, is that how many calls, how much are calls reduced from previous years for SWAT teams? For the SWAT?
Chair Fine, Board Member Dr. Cass, I don't have the numbers as far as the reductions. I know that they're averaging about 10 activations a month.
And we don't know how that compares to the past.
I don't know.
But it is lower, I believe.
Well, we can ask Major Tyler when she comes up.
Well, Chair Fine, Board Member Cass, we can certainly try and get those numbers for you. I don't know that we would be able to quote them off the top of our heads at this point.
Well, I think, what do you think of board members about recognizing achievement?
I think it'd be a great idea.
We're in the job well done business, too. So what if we were to write a letter to Commander McDonald applauding their efforts?
I think that would be great, and I think it would be also nice to, have that data about the number of use of force incidents that they're called out to, and the changes that have gone on in this year compared to 5 years ago, or some benchmark we want to use. I think that would be good for the community to hear as well.
Oh, I agree. Maybe we can ask Major Tyler
To
when she
really
comes
do
up,
a accommodation, but have some data also that says why we're doing it.
Yeah.
If you need a formal motion, I would move that we offer a letter of commendation to SWAT on its progress.
Thank you. We have a second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Chair Fine, if I might suggest, certainly Commander McDonald deserves the recognition, but I would be in favor. I would encourage the board to send that to the entire team.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course, but I mean, it has to go to a person in recommending the entire team being in the SWAT?
Yes.
Okay, well, and it seems appropriate that we would copy the chief on it as well. I just want the accolades to go where they go. That's all. But yes, totally be inclusive of the team. Okay, we'll do that. All right, and number 5, Mr. Harness.
Chair Fine, that was my number 5.
Oh, I missed somebody. So I have CPOA timelines are out of compliance. Our investigations on an administratively closed case, APD use of force investigations with de minimis force, and specialized SWAT and K-9. What did I miss?
Chair Fine, number 3 was the department continues to struggle with investigation and reporting on use of force. Number 4 was the concept of de minimis force. those were two separate points.
All right. Are there any questions?
I have a
of Mr.
question.
Harness about
I have a
this
question.
discussion?
Somehow you reminded me, Director Harness, when you said about minimum use of force, wasn't there a discussion about use of force off-duty, whether those things were being investigated? Wasn't there some kind of accidental discharge of firearms? What happened with that?
Chair Fine, Board Member Dr. Brown, the suggestion, as I recall, was the policy for the Force Review Board was going to be evaluated for including accidental discharges as a part of a force review.
And what happened?
This body has not made that recommendation to the Force Review Board as yet.
Who hasn't, I'm sorry, who hasn't made that?
He's saying we haven't made that recommendation. So would that come from policy committee?
Chair Fine, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Cass, if you would put that on your committee's radar. Are there any other discussions about IMR 6? You're aware that a few of us are meeting on the 14th with the Department of Justice and the Monitor and the other parties. We always have a meeting a few days before our meeting with the judge to see if we can iron out any differences in advance of the meeting. So on the 14th, it's my understanding that Dr. Cass, Valerie, myself, and Sue, and Johnny, Johnny couldn't make it, wasn't it? Wasn't it Johnny that couldn't make it?
Chair Fine, my understanding is that Board Member Armijo would not be able to make it.
Okay, so then Dr. Brown, you would be able to go if you are available. And that is on the 14th. It is at the U.S. Attorney's Office, right? At
Chair
1
Fine, that's
o'clock.
correct, at 1 o'clock.
Right? So we can't have a quorum, that's the point. So if Johnny can't go, you had expressed interest in it yourself. Dr. Brown, would you like to go? Can you go?
I thought the meeting was the day after the...
There is another meeting, I'm getting to that one.
That's the one I was
Okay.
interested in going to, is the day after,
Okay.
not the
All
day
right.
before.
Well,
Thank
no
you.
requirement on the 14th if Dr. Ring or Leonard wants to go to that or anybody else. That meeting is the 14th. On the 16th is the day we meet with the judge and we testify and everybody else testifies on, and Dr. Ginger presents the report. And then subsequently to that, on Friday, the 17th, there is a meeting. Mr. Harness, will you explain what that meeting is about?
Chair Fine and honorable board members, on the 17th is a meeting at 10 a.m.
What time?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I have been told to ensure that everyone understands that it will be casual dress. And it will be a meeting with interested parties to discuss the transition moving forward with a new mayor and now what we positively know as having a new chief moving forward.
Just so that it's clear, the election, of course, is the 14th. I believe the mayoral candidates, whoever wins, has been invited to attend the court meeting on the 16th. So we'll see how that plays out. But just so you know, that is the plan. So the 17th is at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is in the Hyatt Building on the ninth floor. Is that correct?
Chair Fine, that's correct.
And you have to bring your ID. You can't bring your phone. Is that the one you can't bring your phone to? I can't remember.
Chair Fine, no, you can bring your phone to that one.
Just can't bring it to
All
the court.
non-attorneys cannot bring their phones to the courthouse on the 16th.
Okay.
So if you have a bar card, meaning an attorney's card as opposed to a local drinking establishment, you can bring your phone. Other than that, non-attorneys are not allowed to bring phones to the federal courthouse.
Okay. There being no more discussion on IMR 6, may we move to the Open Meetings Act statement. Annually, there's a requirement that we do something on the Open Meetings Act, and Mr. Harness, tell us what it is. Or Mr. Baker.
There's just an annual resolution that's done each year. I'm trying to find it here in the packet. But Chair Fine, members of the board, this is what we've implemented from the beginning.
Chair Fine, did Attorney Jackson attach that statement to you?
No.
Because I didn't see it attached.
I thought it was something.
He has on the agenda, but I don't know that we actually got the verbiage.
Okay. Well, I think we should present it at the next board meeting, that each year, at least once a year, you read out your Open Meetings Act resolution, which governs the manner in which the board will comply with the Open Meetings Act. We've had the same resolution in place for a period of time. It's worked, but we'll have to table it for the agenda for the next.
Well, we can delay it on the agenda if you can find it, and we can submit it
So
tonight.
if you want to hold it off, let me see if I can.
Okay. Well, we'll just table it for now. Okay.
Thanks.
The 2018 meeting dates for the POB. I believe it's in our, is this the one that's in our packet? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Meeting dates, here it is. So we need to do a motion on this, sir? That we all agree to this? Is that correct?
Chair Fine, yes, accepting all of those meeting dates moving forward. Obviously, with the proviso that should conflicts arise, there is the ability to amend dates with proper notice.
Okay. So can I make a motion? Can I just do it because it's easier? I make a motion that our meeting scheduled for the year 2018 be Thursday, January the 11th, 2018, Thursday, February 8th, 2018, Thursday, March 8th, Thursday, April 12th, May 10th, Thursday, June 14th, Thursday, July 12th, Thursday, August 9th, Thursday, September 13th, Thursday, October 11th, and Thursday, November 8th, and Thursday, December 13th, all in 2018. Can I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
This is a good time to remind board members that in our ordinance it says you cannot have 3 unexcused absences and still be on the board. So this is a working board. It's not anything else. So it matters if we show up. So that is that. We'll delay the Open Meetings Act part till later in the agenda, Mr. Baker, and move on to the consent agenda cases. Mr. Waits?
Chair Fine, if there are no questions for the consent agenda cases, don't see none. I make a motion that we approve those cases as presented.
Do we have to do them separately, or can we do them as a group?
Chair Fine, I think it would be cleaner, since they are separate agenda items, to do each one in a separate motion.
Okay. Let's begin with case number...
No, you can just do A, administratively closed cases.
Oh. I thought I did that.
No, you did the whole thing. Okay.
Okay. Chair Fine, correction. Make a motion that the administratively closed cases be approved as they were presented.
Second.
All in
I need a
favor?
second.
All in favor?
Oh, do we need have a second?
Second.
Okay, second, thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Oh, you're staying.
Aye.
Confusing.
Okay.
I'll shut up.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay.
Okay. Case is investigated.
Chair Fine, I make a motion, if there's no discussion, that the cases investigated be approved as presented.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And Chair Fine, we had no cert cases.
Okay, and we asked Mr. Harness to visit with us about that because in a cursory view, it looked like we hadn't had any cert cases brought before us for us to review since May of this year. And it seems to me there's a significant drop in cert cases that, and cert cases we should say, and I think it would be better if it said this, it would be use of force, a serious use of force, and officer-involved shootings. Is that correct?
Chair Fine, that's correct.
Okay, so that is a serious concern to the Case Review Committee, and I would, by extension, think the whole board. What were you able to find out, Mr. Harness?
Chair Fine, I was unable to track the numbers going back to January of 2017 because the link to the case materials disappears after the day after the Force Review Board. So I made contact with Internal Affairs Division, and they're going to get me those numbers so that we can have them ready to discuss on the 14th. So I will have the numbers for all of the cases that have been in front of the Force Review Board versus the number of cases that have been presented to the POB for the year of 2017.
Wouldn't it show up on our agendas, on our own agendas, if there had been cert cases brought to this body?
Yes, Chair Fine, I would have those numbers, but you asked me to
Find out how many
contrast those with the number that had been presented to the Force Review Board.
Gotcha. You're right. But we know for sure we haven't had any cases since May, and that's just not okay. We promised this community, and as representatives of this community, we said we were going to go through all the cases, no matter how old they were, no matter what. And we stand ready to do that, and we don't have the cases to review. So I'd like to get to the bottom of why that's a problem, or why it's not happening if it's not a problem. You have anything else, Mr. Williams?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair Fine, members of the board, if you want to bounce back at whatever time, I've got the resolution available. It's the same language as had been provided in previous years, and if you all want to peruse it, it's just a proposed change to the date.
Why don't you just read it?
I'll read it. It's relatively long, but I can work my way
it?
through it. It's like 2 pages, 2 typed pages. I thought it might be easier to continue with the agenda, let you all flip through it on the iPad,
Okay,
and then
that's fine with
make
me.
progress so that everyone can be comfortable with the language.
Well, it certainly is an important resolution for us. And we have review of Garrity materials. We have cases for that.
Yes, Chair Fine, honorable board members, I believe it was about 10 days ago I received these 2 officer-involved shooting cases in a binder format, which is contrary to how we agreed that the board would be able to review officer-involved shooting cases.
Pass binders around.
So they were returned, and they are being scanned and uploaded, will be scanned and uploaded to the Safe Link for your review, but it's appropriate at this point to reserve the right to review the Garrity materials, so that's why they're on the agenda.
So Garrity materials, if I can explain this to the public, Garrity materials are compelled statements by law enforcement. Officers have the right to not incriminate themselves, but they are compelled to tell the story, whatever that is. So we, as a board, have the authority to go and review those materials at the police station, the police headquarters, for the purposes of this case, but we cannot discuss them. Anything related to a Garrity statement. And Garrity is a reference to a case law under somebody named Garrity. But that's what we're referring to. So we have to ask for the permission to, in these cases, read the Garrity statements given in an officer-involved shooting case, in this case 2 cases. so that we have permission. We are formally asking the police department for the ability to review those Garrity materials, and that's what this is for. Okay? Any questions about that?
We need a motion.
We need a motion.
Chair Fine, I make a motion that we have the ability to review the Garrity materials, and that's case I-188-13 and I-48-14.
Second.
All those, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign? And the I in these cases means it's internal affairs. So it's not a case generated to us. Obviously, it's an officer-involved shooting. So we are reviewing their investigation. Reports from subcommittees. Community Outreach Subcommittee, Dr. Ring.
Yes, ma'am. The Community Outreach Subcommittee met on October 17th, and at that meeting we discussed the outreach effort that had taken place the prior week on October 9th when Dr. Cass and our outreach coordinator Amanda Bustos had attended the Silver Hills Neighborhood Association at Heights Community Center and discussed the CPOA and the board, and they reported that lots of interaction took place, and they felt it was a good effort, and we agreed that we would try to continue those efforts and other similar efforts. We also said that we would each try to attend a CPC meeting each month, and in all honesty, I haven't done that yet, but it's,
I know several of the board members have. I know that they have.
But those also are open to all of the membership of our entire POB, so we'd like to invite that. We have a new agency brochure with a incorporated complaint/commendation form in process at this point. I had hoped that we would have it here tonight, but I talked with Ms. Bustos this afternoon, and the graphic designer or whomever's involved has not completed it as yet. So we're moving forward with that. We're also moving forward with our subcommittee's goals and objectives. We have a draft of those that has gone out a couple of times, and we're continuing to refine it until we get to where we feel comfortable. One other item that I just found out about is that we are going to add a new member to our subcommittee, and that would be Ms. St. John, who has agreed to come on board, and so we will become 4 rather than 3. And our next meeting is this coming Tuesday evening. I believe that's the 14th at 5 p.m. And I'm not quite sure whether we're in the basement or on the 3rd floor of the Plaza del Sol building that night, but I'm sure we'll find out between now and then. And that's our report.
Thank you, Dr. Ring. Are there any questions for Dr. Ring? Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee, Dr. Cass?
I've got several things. One is that the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee met, and we've been working on a policy for developing policy. And I think we're, closing in on something. And part of that is that Dr. Brown suggested a simplification of what what I originally proposed, so that we go directly to the SOPRC, and we go directly to APD in some form, and it was Major Tyler's suggestion that we might do that through the SOPRC. So in addition to that policy, we're working on a tracking system, and we now have Marianne Verploeg on, on contract. At least I believe that's been finalized, but in any case, she's been doing some work, and we've consulted, and we've talked about the kind of how we could track a policy, including all the activities that go into getting that ready for presentation to APD and then following it through the APD process. So that's also a work in progress. There's a couple of policies that we are talking about now, and one is that Dr. Brown resurrected the ordinance change, and that was something that has been presented, I believe, to the council, but I don't believe it's gone anywhere recently. And in fact, with casual conversations I've had with a couple of council people, they're kind of looking for something, I think, from us, and maybe you can make some comment about that. The last thing is, I think we have some bit of a breakthrough in that I attended a PPRB meeting last week, and after the meeting talked to the facilitator, I guess, of PPRB, who suggested that there would be some real change in including more of the public in terms of writing policies. And in fact, he mentioned that they'd sent out 100 letters to the community in order to get more community involvement in the policy process, and that we would get more consideration as a board for introducing policy recommendations. So I see that as a positive sign on APD's part. I think that's all I have, unless there's questions.
I have a question. Since we have our guest, Michael Zokol, here, I wondered how, if any discussion has happened within the policy committee about how the CPCs might give us input into what policies they're concerned about, if that's a possibility.
Well, I go to a number of CPC meetings, and at the last one that I attended at the Northeast Heights, I actually presented as kind of something for consideration to the small groups that were meeting within the CPC to suggest that we might we might look at the Code 3 policy, running with licensed sirens. And so I think the CPCs are an opportunity. If we go, it essentially represents the intersection of community outreach and policy, and I think that's a good place to gather that sort of information. I mean, CPCs have their own method, their own mechanism for introducing policy recommendations, but I think we can facilitate that by being present at CPC meetings and making it known that we're interested in carrying their policies. So,
I have one more question,
sure,
if I may. The process, highlight for me again was the policy process, which is important, really important. I'm not clear when something comes to the board for approval, because the policy committee, just like any other committee, can't decide by itself that they're going to go ahead and do that. They have to bring it to the board. So tell me again, when does that happen?
When the policy and procedure subcommittee decides that we want to present it, that it's ready to come to the board. So before we do that, what we want to do is make the proposal, write up a rough draft of what it is we're interested in, do some research, which we now have the capability of doing much more extensively, consider what the research is as a policy committee, and then decide whether we want to make a recommendation to the board, to make a recommendation to APD.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it wasn't.
Yes.
turn it.
We have a path. It's
Well, it would be an awkward position for us to have a policy committee going directly to APD with a policy that the board hadn't seen.
and
so-
I think we explicitly won't do
I'm
that.
sure we did,
Right.
but I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I don't think we want to do that, and I think any policy recommendation that goes to APD should have the board approval.
Okay. All right, that's the only questions I had. Did you have a question?
Well, I was just trying to think of the CPCs. I know that they work on coming up, with policies and recommendation to APD. Perhaps it might be a way to contact them and ask them that they can welcome to give us a copy.
Oh, yeah, just to copy us as they.
Yeah, they can copy us and we can read it too and, take it into consideration.
Dr. Cass would be the
Yes.
one to get it. Okay,
Okay.
good. I think the more ways we can do that, I think the same is true. And I know, Sue, when you were chairing this committee, there was a lot of interaction with the mental health amici people, Peter Kubra and others. So I just think it's, if there's a way to collaborate on these things, it would be good.
Well, I had one more thing, and that is that we're creating a list of policies that have been before,
Right.
have gone through some part of the process, so that we've got, something that we can present as evidence that we've been busy. So-
Well, gosh, no, I know you've been busy. It's a lot to take in all that's occurred before and to document it as history, I know it may sound crazy to the public that you have a policy on policies, but because all this input is coming from different places, it's important that we have some kind of consistency on what policy looks like when it goes to, when we're having a discussion. And so, not only amongst ourselves, but with APD. And so that's why what the committee's doing is so important. Is there anything else on that, Dr. Cass, that you want to?
No, that's all.
Okay. Mr. Waits?
Okay, Chair Fine. I have two things. I have a short report on what we've done as far as the review committee. Outside of discussing the cases, the administratively closed cases and the other cases, we briefly talked about the cert cases, which I'm sure Director Harness will go into more, or has gone into more detail with that. And that's kind of my report.
Oh, I did it again. I
Yeah.
did it again.
But one thing I'd like to see, and it's going to be work for me too, is that we're each working on our subcommittees, but there's no report to us as individuals on what we're working on. So I'm recommending that we report somehow to the whole committee on the things that we're working on, so that we're up to speed with what you're working on, or have a suggestion on some of the things that that you are working on. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what was the second thing? Was there a second? That was the second thing. Okay. All right. There's a comment?
By way of
Oh,
response, Mr. Waits, we produce minutes of our meetings, and we would be glad to ask the CPOA office to just distribute those minutes to all members.
Well, I think it's a function of what we're doing here. The function of the report here is to do that very thing.
Well, you can get them in advance of the meeting.
I'm not looking for one more thing to read, to
Oh,
tell you
okay.
the truth. I'm looking for some dialogue, and I think that's
and
good.
I think that's what I'm looking for also. But first you got to know what they're doing. So
Right.
that's to me one way to get that information, and then possibly have that dialogue.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else?
No, I
Mr.
don't
Waits?
have anything.
Okay, Personnel Subcommittee, Eric Cruz could not be here tonight, but I know that you have all received feedback. The Personnel Committee exists to do a review annually It's more of an ad hoc committee. It's a review of Director Harness. And you have or should have in your email feedback form. I serve on that committee, and Mr. Waits serves on that committee. Is there anybody else? I don't think so. I think it's just the three of us. But everybody has input into that, and Mr. Cruz is heading that effort up. He's accepted the chair of the Personnel Committee. So I know if he was here, he would report that to you.
I have a question, and that is who in the email that I got that was asked for an evaluation of Director Harness, there was a long list of people, including CPC members. Is that who is invited to make this evaluation?
Well, I don't know all the details that Eric's going through, but we did do all of that the last time when Beth was running it, and I believe he has all of her lists that she used, and we did seek input from city people, from the CPCs, from others that were community input in addition to the board. And so I don't know how much feedback we got. One change I know he asked me about on the phone was we had anonymous feedback, and that just, we thought that was dysfunctional. We thought people should be able to put their names on it. It's never going to be published. It's never going to be put out there. But it is feedback for the board, which is appropriate. So I think the form you'll see has a place for your name. And we know who we've invited, so we make sure that it hasn't been copied and put out there to somebody who has nothing to do with this process. So I think that's a little tighter there, but not very. So Eric can tell us more when he's here. Okay. Reports from city staff. APD. Major Tyler, thank you for being here. Is your class over?
Yes, ma'am.
It's over? She survived the 12 weeks?
Good evening, Chair Fine and members of the board. Yes, thank you. I am officially back, so trying to get my feet back under me. I should have, I think, pretty good updates for most of your concerns, but there might be a few lingering items that I'll have to follow up on. As far as the serious use of force cases, when I saw this on the agenda, I was very confused and concerned for the same reasons I'm sure you are. I did find out that, I know there was a time around May and June where we were trying to distinguish the process of when you guys would receive the cases, whether it would be prior to the Force Review Board or after the Force Review Board. And it was around that time that it was decided that it would be done after the Force Review Board. And I thought there had been some cases that had been sent to you after that determination had been made, and that they were, at least to my recollection, that those cases were lacking the documentation from the outcome of the Force Review Board. And so when that was brought to my attention, I had directed my staff to ensure that that documentation was included in the cert cases from that point forward. And that's where I guess the breakdown occurred, because they didn't have access. My personnel didn't necessarily have access to the Force Review Board documentation because it's a different group that keeps that documentation. And so they were waiting for that documentation to be given to them to include in the case files for you guys. But I also was told that there had been at least 4 officer-involved shooting cases that had been sent to you guys from May. So I don't know if it's totally accurate that there has been no cases sent to you from May, but it's something that's definitely a priority on our to-do list to get you the cases. And like I said, it should be the direction for both my internal staff as well as the FRB have now been instructed that as soon as the documentation is finalized on those cases, to get it to my staff so that it can be included in the case files for your review.
And do you have an expectation of time, how long that will take?
It's going to be, they should start coming to you next week. From what I could tell from just a quick look through the cases, there's approximately 11 cases from the time frame of May to August. And then I think that, again, I was out of the office for those weeks, but I had heard, I believe, that there had been a slowdown. I think from the last meeting, Director Harness had stated that there hadn't been as many Force Review Boards occurring. So I don't think there would be that many from August and from September and October.
Okay. So we should start seeing cases come in.
Absolutely, and I would ask you that if you don't start seeing them within the next couple weeks, that you could reach out to me, because obviously, for it to go in almost 6 months then, for you guys to have not gotten cases, it was a little bit frustrating for me to just learn of this now, because obviously that's a priority that we should be getting those cases.
Well, if my memory serves me, I brought it up a couple of times at this meeting, saying we're not getting those cert cases, we're not getting them. So it may or may not be the case that you were here, but that I know I brought it up.
Right, and like I said, I know in May and June it was, the delay was trying to determine at what point the POB would be receiving the cases for review, but that had been rectified, I thought, so.
Okay. Well, I look forward to being rectified now.
The second item that you have listed under APD is a policy recommendation update for the CYFD referrals. I thought that you guys were going to make a written recommendation to the department on that. I have not personally seen that. I don't know what we're supposed to be doing on that recommendation. If you could.
I think right in the letter we mentioned that, didn't we, Director Harness?
Chair Fine, yes, there was a recommendation contained in the findings letter from Investigator Scotch DePole.
Okay, so this is the Victoria Martins case?
That's correct.
And that's my understanding. So our feedback to you is that we got a letter from the chief saying that they disagreed with our findings and had a much lesser punishment in mind, but it did not in that letter address the CYFD piece recommendation. So it was an incomplete letter in our view. So
Okay.
we would just like the other half of that letter, if you wouldn't mind carrying
Chair
it.
Fine and members of the board, I will follow up on that portion of it then for you. The third item is no response yet for the chief on I-22-2017. There had been a delay in getting that done from what I was told today. It is finalized, it just has to be reviewed, so you can expect that early next week. In that time frame, it was also brought to my attention, just to update the board, that the 30-day turnaround time is difficult for it to go through our chain and then for them, for the review process, it's not very reasonable. So I would propose that we would work out some sort of system in order to, whether we alert you that there would be a delay in receiving the letter, or if, how you want to handle that, but you will be getting the letter on that case next week.
Well, we certainly understand the shortness of timelines.
Yeah. And it's been brought
And the need for us all to meet this, and if I'm mistaken, correct me, but I think this is all part of the negotiated agreement with the union, that we're all on these 30-day timelines. This one particular one is out of the ordinance. So we certainly appreciate the tightness of timelines and how crazy that makes us all. But, you know, certainly you could if you could let us know, we've gone down that road before.
Yes.
Let us know if you need an extension before the 30 days is up, and at least respond and say, we're not there, but we'll be there soon, and we'll be there by this date. That would be certainly fine with us, I'm sure. Mr. Harness, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Chair Fine, I think the issue was actually going to be contemplated in city legal making a recommendation for the amendment in the ordinance as a way to deal with the obligations of the department because of the Loudermill hearing that's required, and the steps that the department has to take before it can properly institute discipline. And I don't know whether or not City Legal made those recommendations to City Council in conjunction with our amendments for the City Council to consider those, because that was the solution that was discussed, so that the department has the time it needs to do the review properly, so that there aren't any violations of procedural due process, and still provide notice properly to the board.
Well, it seems to me like we're going to have an update in some fashion for the ordinance. Is that what this item B2 is? No, that's the other thing. So are we going to talk about where we are with the ordinance generally? Because that's what she's talking to, right?
Well, Chair Fine and members of the board, I also would echo what Director Harness stated, and that timeframe being hindered by the due process for the officers was brought up to the Assistant City Attorney. I was told that they are working on it, but I don't know what the status of it is or if it was also included in the proposed revisions to the current revision of the ordinance.
It may be that Mr. Moya has some information in that regard. We can wait till your report, sir, if you want to jump in now, whichever.
Chair Fine, board members, I can just jump in now. I did not get the latest update on this ordinance and where it's at, but I can tell you that it has not been introduced yet. I know that Councilor Winter wanted to get some feedback from the union and from ABD. I'm not sure where that's at. But listening to Mr. Cass's comments earlier, if there is other councilors that are interested in sponsoring it, we can check in with them as well and see if they're interested in sponsoring it. We can, I'm happy to work with Mr. Cass or the rest of the board members and work with some councilors to get it moving if it's stuck somewhere right now.
Dr. Cass? Oh, good to see you. Are you willing to approach another council member to see and work with?
Yes,
Mr. Moya?
yes.
Okay. We'll take care of that at the same time. Hopefully, we'll get it all done at the same time. We're not going to get it in pieces.
That would be great. Thank you. The next item is the update on the Citizens Police Academy. We did check our records, and there were no current videos of any of the prior sessions. I know it is planned. I know my staff is working with you, Chair Fine, at the proposed date for the next Citizens Police Academy that your new members could attend, which would be February, hoping to capture also the new members that join the board next year. So that's where we are with that. As far as our internal affairs statistical data report for the month of October, dispatch calls for service for October of 2017, there was a total of 44,094, which is a decrease of 1,455 from September. The total number of internal affairs cases completed in the month of October was 12. 3 of those were internal affairs investigations, and 3 of those were area command investigated cases. No cases were administratively closed. There was 1 case that was mediated. That was an airport case or an aviation case. Discipline imposed for internal affairs cases in October of 2017 included 6 verbal reprimands, 5 letters of reprimand, 1 suspension of 8 hours, 1 suspension of 16 hours, 1 suspension of 32 hours, 1 suspension of 80 hours, and 1 suspension of 240 hours. Early intervention and recognition system alerts for October of 2017, there was a total of 12 alerts distributed. We have a total of 19 pending cases during the month of October, as well as 7 new opened cases for a total of 26 in the month of October. Also, to give you an update in regard to the question on the number of SWAT calls, I did check with my counterpart, and he believed that they are at 68 call-outs for the year so far for 2017. Prior to the implementation of the CASA, he thought that they were averaging between 100 and 120 call-outs per year.
Wow.
So
That's great.
we are a little bit obviously below the total number. Obviously, that can change at
Do you think that might be due to the matrix, the protocol that you've set in place of what requires a SWAT call?
Part of it is due to the matrix. There was also other substantive changes to the policy, such as not sending SWAT teams out for subjects who were threatening suicide. So there are different parameters as to when SWAT will be utilized, which has led to that decreased number of activations for the team.
It's amazing.
Major Tyler,
Yes,
I noticed something missing, and it was missing last month as well, the accident reports.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Chair Fine and Board Member Dr. Rink, I had been told from TJ Wilhelm that we would discuss a better mechanism into reporting those going forward so that we would not add to the confusion as far as when the cases had been reviewed by the Crash Review Board versus when the crashes had occurred. So we need to work together, and we can maybe put that on one of our agenda items for the next time we have a small group meeting as to what would be amenable to the board for that reporting, because we didn't want to further any confusion or further more confusion as we had prior to the study that was done by TJ Wilhelm and his group.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
I don't have any. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
No.
Mr. Moya, thank you for being here.
Chair Fine, board members, we have reopened the application process on our website, the City Council website. In previous times, we have done it in kind of a short amount of time or with the deadline. But from here on out, we're just going to leave the application open and continually accept applications and add to the candidate pool. For folks that are currently in our candidate pool, they'll be able to stay in the candidate pool if they want to. I've reached out to everyone in there, and I've gotten some responses that most people want to stay. So we'll still have a good candidate pool, but we'll just be able to accept some applications moving forward. I know there's some people that some board members have already recommended, or not recommended, but referred to me. I'll be reaching out to them to make sure they have the link for the application. The application can be filled out online. You can download a hard copy from the website or pick one up from our office. There's just a small list of qualifications that need to be met to be placed in the candidate pool. So we're moving forward with that. If any of the board members have any questions, please let me know. If you guys know people that are interested and they have questions, please refer them to me or refer them to the website. And my contact information is all over that webpage as well. So I'll be happy to help anybody through that process. So related to that, we have an OC for an appointment to fill Ms. Garcia's vacant spot. That should be on the council agenda for November 20th for approval. And then moving forward for the February appointments, we are going to have this application open until early December. The selection committee will get together in early December and probably recommend however seats we need to fill at that point for February. So hopefully have it done in council by the end of December or the very first meeting in January, where those appointments will be approved and we can get them a little bit of a head start on the training for February.
Oh, that is great news. It really is important. We have one board member who cannot vote yet because there hasn't been a class for the Citizens Police Academy. But we can catch everybody up in February. And I know that ABD is trying to get a shortened version that has the essentials there, so it isn't the 12 weeks, a training that we all went through, and still is substantial. It really is a beneficial training. It really is. And the ongoing training that we have is also really good. So it really matters that we get this done, and they're named by our February meeting. And so that they can move ahead quickly. For people that don't know, would you be willing to share with them what the address is for the web address for the application?
Chair Fine, the web address would be, it's going to be kind of long, but it's cabq.gov/council/Albuquerque Police Oversight Board application. If they just go to the City Council homepage, scroll down on the left side, they'll see a tab, Police Oversight Board application. There'll also be a news item that I just put on there earlier today that would have a link to that application as well. We did send out a media release. The Office of Neighborhood Coordination is going to be sending out the link on Monday as a part of their weekly announcements to the neighborhood associations. So we'll be trying to get the word out as much as possible to let people know that they can apply to serve.
And Mr. Harness, I was thinking that the CPCs should have this information as well. And certainly I posted it today on my social media accounts, with the link on it, so people could do that. I think it would be helpful if we all did that, and did as much as we could to help promote this. Obviously, we all think, the ordinance thinks, the CASA thinks, the city council certainly has shown its support for citizens being involved in the oversight of law enforcement in a collaborative and clearly distinct way. I think all of us really care about this process and are willing to devote some time to it. And if any of the people out there are interested in that, please follow up and submit your application. The process, just so you know, the board members do not pick the other board members. The city council staff reviews the applications and vets those people, and everyone who is accepted for as a potential candidate has to pass a background check. Is there anything else I should say about that, sir?
Just on the Chair Fine, just on the webpage, there's a couple other things, like you can't be employed by law enforcement, by APD within the past year.
Or be in litigation with law enforcement.
Yeah, have to be a city of Albuquerque resident.
Right.
Pass a background check. Those are kind of the main things.
The application says it all.
Yeah,
it says all the things that are necessary.
I have a question for clarification. How many vacancies are we expecting?
I think that Dr. Ring
Correct.
is leaving the board in February. His term is
Well,
over.
it's not up, but I've made that pretty clear. I believe that Mr. Armijo wishes to continue, so he would not have to be replaced. His term is up. But as I look at that, it appears that at least at February, you may only have 4 qualified voting trained members, which isn't good.
No, it is not good. Dr. Brown, do you plan to continue after February?
No, I don't.
Okay, so there's two vacancies that I know of. And I haven't heard from Mr. Armijo myself, but and I'm not sure about Eric. So I don't know where we are with those things, but certainly if anybody's considering not continuing in their position, please let me know by email so that I have it.
Chair Fine, the terms that will be up in February are Mr. Armijo, Ms. Brown, and Mr. Waits. Mr. Cruz was reappointed, I believe, last February.
So he's already in.
Okay.
All right, so, but Dr. Ring is leaving us, but what about you? He's not leaving. He can't leave, I told him. I begged him, he can't leave. Anyway, that's very important for you to know how many seats will you have. So I'm asking the board to please let me know if you're considering not finishing your term or not renewing a term. APD is done, City Council is OS 55.
Yeah, so Chair Fine, 055 is the bill sponsored by Councilor Winter. It was on the agenda for this past Monday's meeting, but it was deferred to the November 20th meeting and should be heard there.
And tell us what it is.
It will, Chair Fine, board members, it will prohibit, let me get the correct wording here. It prohibit elected officials, departments, boards, and commissions, and advisory groups of the city from organizing, sponsoring, advertising, or hosting political forums.
Okay. Okay, do you want to take a break? Yeah, we need to take a break. We are just going to take a break for dinner, and we'll be right back. We don't have anything private with our attorney, do we, sir? Okay, that means anybody who's here and is hungry can come join us. We're back together, and thank you, everybody, we just have a little bit left to cover. Just been informed that the city attorney's office is not represented here, and do you have any update, Director Harness, on the ride-along form?
Chair Fine, I do not. That's going between Attorney Baker and Attorney Jackson and the City Attorney's Office, going back and forth, getting that worked out.
When do we expect to get some answers on this?
Chair Fine, we've been pressing it with repeated follow-up emails and just haven't yet gotten...
Is the delay in the City Attorney's Office or with APD, or where is it?
I believe our communication has been through the City Attorney's Office, and we have not heard back, and we've followed up. So I'll follow up again.
This has been months.
I realize that. We've been pushing it. But I can't make... we're making as loud of noise as we reasonably can at this point on it, and so I'll follow up again tomorrow.
Thank you. Director Harness, your report.
Chair Fine, honorable board members, for the month of October, we received 36 online complaints, 9 in-person complaints, and 21 311 complaints. We received 6 job well dones. As previously stated, the meeting with the stakeholders prior to the presentation of the IMR 6 to Judge Brack is on the 14th of November at 1 p.m. at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I've also arranged for the meeting on November 17th at the U.S. Attorney's Office with members of the Department of Justice to discuss the transition. On Wednesday, I met with some members of the Leadership Council of the Albuquerque African American clergy.
African American what?
Clergy.
Clergy.
I spoke with them for about 2 hours. They wanted to know how they could, they wanted to better understand what we do and how we do it. And they wanted to know how they could better support the mission of the Oversight Board and the agency. They are going to encourage members of the City Council to sponsor the amendment changes that we have proposed, and they will be making those phone calls. We anticipate that perhaps after the first of the year, I will go back and speak to a larger group of the Leadership Council so that we will be able to reach out to all of the African American congregations throughout the city of Albuquerque. So looking forward to doing that follow-up. We did a presentation at the University of New Mexico Police and Policy Seminar this afternoon. That went well. We concluded the IA investigation training last week with the Dago Law Group, and we had 50 participants from all across the West, New Mexico, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, 17 members from Albuquerque Police Department, 2 board members, as you're aware, and then the investigative staff from the CPOA. And we've got nothing but positive feedback about the training. I think that the Dago Law Group does a great job of presenting a very balanced approach to police conduct and professionalism, and also does a great job of highlighting red flags and problem areas as it relates to police accountability. And I look forward to, I think, our staff and the staff from Internal Affairs maybe being more on the same page when we evaluate investigations moving forward. The monitor site visit at this point is still scheduled for January 15th through the 20th for IMR 7. We have our data requests in for IMR 7, and we're fulfilling those requests to Mr. Giaquinto. The POB recruitment website was distributed, the link was distributed to all the CPCs this afternoon and to all of our connections through the CPOA that went out. And as Mr. Moya stated, it will be in the Neighborhood Association newsletter that comes out on Monday.
As well as to the media. I think, Mr. Moyer, you mentioned it would go out to the media as well.
Yes. And other than that, I stand for questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Harness, Director Harness? Do you have any questions? Okay. We don't have any pending litigation issues, correct? So, Mr. Baker? But we should bring up that other item on the Open Meetings Act.
Yes.
Okay. How
So,
do we proceed?
So Chair, fine members of the board, having reviewed the Open Meetings Act resolution that tracks the resolution that's been in place since I've represented the board, other than updating it for this year, the purpose of tonight would be to pass the resolution, accepting it for the next year. You've all had a chance to go back through it, so you've been reminded about the requirements, and I think we try to mind that closely with you all, and you all are very cognizant of it and raise it with me as well. And so all we need is a vote to approve the resolution, and then you'll be covered for this year.
Do we have to make a motion with a resolution in it?
To approve the resolution as circulated this evening.
Oh, okay. All right. Will somebody make a motion to that effect?
I would move that we continue our adherence to the Open Meetings Act resolution as we have done in the past during 2018.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Is there any other business to come before the board?
I have something.
Okay.
Okay. I still worry about the HR policy about promotions for supervisors in APD, and evidently maybe it's up to us to talk to HR instead, because Mr. Baker couldn't find that there's an actual court case, and I'm just really confused where that is, because the 20 pages that the union has really doesn't talk about community policing at all, and I really very much would like to get that back in there. So I don't know where to go now. If it really isn't filed lawsuit then, or injunction, what do we do?
Mr. Hartis, do you have any information to add to this?
Chair Fine, Board Member Dr. Brown, I don't believe I don't believe that it's an extrajudicial lawsuit. I believe it's a part of the settlement agreement, and because the policy was sent to Dr. Ginger for review. My understanding is that it's at Judge Brack for him to make a final decision as to which draft should move forward for adoption, and at that point, that's when public input would be allowed prior to its adoption. But I don't know exactly where it is in that phase. That would be a question that Attorney Schmiel would be able to answer.
Major Tyler has something to add?
Chair Fine and members of the board, Director Harness is correct in that it still has not made its way to Judge Brack at this point. There is still dispute between the APOA as well as the city. They have now asked Dr. Ginger to make a recommendation on which version he would like to send to Judge Brack, and then it would be in Judge Brack's hand to make his ruling, and then one of the parties that wasn't happy with the way that the policy was resolved would have their ability to take further action at that point. So I think it's going to still be, unfortunately, some time before it gets to the point where it would be published for the public hearings through HR.
Is there an expectation that next week when Judge Brack is here in town, that this may be an item for discussion?
I had stepped out of the room briefly during the parties meeting this week when they were discussing it. As I came in, I believe that the parties set out a time frame for when Dr. Ginger would make his final ruling on what policy would be presented to Judge Brack. I do think that that will be something that will be discussed during the court hearing on the 16th. I don't know that it will be that he's actually receiving the policy, but he will be updated at that court hearing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll have more information after the 16th.
I just don't want the train to leave the station without us.
Yes, okay.
That's my major concern.
A very good point. Is there anything else, Dr. Brown?
No.
Okay,
Thank
anybody
you.
else? I'd accept a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is, regularly scheduled meeting is on December 14th at 5 p.m. in these chambers. And I would stand for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
You need a
Thank you
ride?
for coming.
Oh, okay, no problem.